DBT, Emotion Regulation 5. In today's session, we're going to focus on the final way that we can change our emotional responses, which is by problem solving. Life is full of wonderful moments, but it's also full of painful ones. There's no choice about many of those painful moments, but how you handle the pain can add to or decrease the emotional suffering in your life. When you're overwhelmed by life situations, one way you might naturally respond is by defending yourself. You attempt to cope in ways that lessen the stress, but sometimes people have coping strategies that offer temporary relief but make the situation worse in the long run, avoiding the actual problem. Sometimes, in an effort to take action, people attempt to solve problems that can't be solved, becoming more and more frustrated when their efforts don't work. Others might become paralysed, unable to decide what to do. Intense emotions can be really overwhelming, fatiguing, and can cloud your ability to think clearly. So we're going to look at problem solving. When an emotion is justified by the situation, avoiding or changing the situation might be the best way to change our emotions. Problem solving is the first step in changing difficult situations. When an unwanted emotion fits the facts are the problem, and you need problem solving. Doing what's needed in order to change emotional responses can be very difficult. It requires effort, willingness, and an ability to determine what is in one's own best interest. Yes, but is a typical response to efforts to help a person change emotions, particularly when emotional intensity is high, or perhaps sometimes changing emotions is experienced as admitting that the person's own feelings are invalid. The problem is that yes, but doesn't lead to feeling better or solving emotional problems. The ability to solve problems is a basic skill that everyone needs in order to build a life worth living. It's one of the core skills necessary for improving emotion regulation or solving emotional problems. Problem solving as a coping strategy increases the probability of effective coping with a wide range of problematic situations. In contrast to skills that are automatic and effortless, at least after a bit of practice, problem solving ordinarily requires a conscious and focused effort aimed at developing and applying new solutions to the problems we encounter in everyday life. Before starting problem solving, you have to recognise that there is indeed a problem to be solved. Types of problem situations might include situations or people that elicit painful or destructive emotions, situations or peoples that are habitually avoided because they cause painful emotions, one-time problem situations like not being able to get to an important appointment or having an acute illness, and repeated problem situations like being repeatedly misinterpreted by a friend or repeatedly failing important exams. Other problem situations might include repeated failures to inhibit destructive or ineffective behaviour, like self-harm, angry outbursts or missing work, and chronic problem situations, so ongoing situations that create continual misery in life, such as living with a partner who's abusive or working in a job one hates. So it's important we let go of judgmentalness and realise that problems are specific to persons and situations. Situations that are a problem for one person might not necessarily be a problem for another. And also the very same painful emotion might be caused by very different situations depending on the person. Problems are also specific to time and circumstances. The same situation might be a problem at one time, but not at another, depending on the change in circumstances within the same person. In DBT, when we're presented with a problem in life, or when yes but rears its head, we have 4 possible options. The first is to solve the problem, so change the situation, or avoid, leave, or get out of the situation for good. That might involve using interpersonal effectiveness skills if your problem involves another person or another group of people. The second option is to change your emotional reaction to the situation. So that's using your emotion regulation skills to change your perspective on the problems or life in general. So looking past the immediate problem and seeing the bigger picture and better prospects in your future. This is an option that you could choose in the beginning, and then once you've weathered the storm of your emotions, so to speak, you might consider solving the problem. Sometimes we need to take care of our emotional needs and decrease the intensity of our emotions before we can work at solving the problem or changing our feelings about the problem. So this option could be your destination, or it could be part of your journey to your final destination for the problem you're faced with. The third option is to radically accept the situation. So accepting that the problem is happening and tolerating both the problem itself and your responses to it. You may use your distress tolerance and mindfulness skills in order to do this. These skills will help us stay in the moment or focus our attention onto a different moment that's not the problem. These skills help us get through particularly difficult situations where we might not have the skills or the capacity to actually solve the problem. Some problems just have to be tolerated and radically accepted because there's nothing more we can do about them. Again, this could be your destination, or it could be part of the journey to your final destination for the problem you're faced with. The fourth option is that we stay miserable or we make things worse by creating more problems for ourselves. Although this isn't a good solution, it's still a solution, so you have a choice in exploring your options. So we're now going to look into the 7 basic steps in problem solving. The first is that we observe and describe the problem situation. So using our mindfulness what skills of describing, just give the facts of the situation. Next, describe what about the situation is problematic. So include the consequences of the situation that make it a problem for you. For example, not being able to get a lift to my important appointment means that I can't get to my appointment and I'm afraid I'll miss it. Describe the obstacles to solving the problem. So something like, by the time I find another way of getting there, it'll be too late and I'll miss it. Secondly, we need to check the facts. So ask yourself, are my facts correct? How distressing is the situation? So am I catastrophizing? And do the conflicts or other obstacles I've described reflect the facts of the situation? Thirdly, identify your goal in solving the problem. For the earlier example, it might be that we find a way to get to the important appointment. Then, brainstorm lots of solutions. Come up with as many ideas as possible for solving the problem. Don't judge them. Then you need to choose a solution that fits the goal and is likely to work. This might mean prioritising the suggested solutions, so organising them in order of likelihood to work and feasibility of implementation. A solution that might work is useless if it's impossible to put into action. You could also use pros and cons and consult wise mind about this. Next, we need to put the solution into action. The entire enterprise of problem solving is aimed at putting into action an effective solution to the problem at hand. The chief problems we might have here are as follows. We might encounter fear-generating thoughts, things like, if this doesn't work, I'll look like a fool, or this won't work and I'll be a failure, or people will get mad at me, etc. We also might encounter willfulness, things like, I shouldn't have to solve this, they caused it, or if I do something to solve this, I'll look weak. We also might become quite impulsive, so running headfirst into the problem with an impulsive, ineffective solution rather than the one we initially thought through. And then lastly, you need to evaluate the results of implementing the solution you chose. So ask yourself, am I satisfied with the results of my problem solving? Do I feel better about my situation than before? Were there any negative consequences for myself or others? Really, the bottom line here is that even the best laid plans can go awry. Even when a solution is carried out exactly as planned, it can fail. Unanticipated obstacles can arise, or others can respond in an unexpected way. So a critical step in problem solving is to examine how well one's actions work in solving a problem. Once you realise that you have to evaluate your problem solving, you might be more open to the idea that effective problem solving can take multiple efforts with different solutions before you find the one solution or set of solutions that actually solves the problem. Often, if a first effort doesn't solve a problem completely, it will at least improve the situation somewhat. To conclude our session today, it's important to note that problem solving is a process that takes time and patience. The idea that there are simple, one-shot solutions can present a tremendous barrier to the focused, difficult, and time-consuming process that solving some problems can require.